All right, today we are diving into one of the most, well, macabre objects in all of folklore. We're talking about the Hand of Glory. Picture this. You're in a quiet little museum in Whitby, England, and you come across a strange, mummified hand. It's a relic from a time when people, well, they believed a dead man's hand could do the impossible. So you have to wonder, what if they were right? What if this totally grotesque artifact really held the key to the perfect crime? Let's get into it.
So, first things first, what exactly is a Hand of Glory? It's way more than just some spooky prop for Halloween. This thing was a legendary tool with a very, very dark purpose.
Okay, so according to the folklore from Northern England, and other places too, a Hand of Glory is, get this, the severed hand of a criminal who was executed, usually by hanging. And it wasn't just any hand, no. It was typically the left hand, or, the very hand that did the deed. That hand would then be dried, pickled, and preserved, all to be used as a pretty terrifying magical instrument.
But why? Why would anyone go to such gruesome lengths to make one of these things? Well, if you were a thief, the Hand of Glory was like the ultimate skeleton key. It promised a set of powers that were, frankly, out of this world.
The list of powers people believe this thing had, it's just staggering. We're talking about the ability to unlock any door, to literally freeze people in place, or to put an entire household into this deep, magical sleep that you just couldn't break. Some stories even claimed it could make you invisible. And the candle that went with it, usually made from the dead man's own fat and hair, it was said to cast a light that only the holder could see. It's basically the perfect toolkit for a completely silent, totally supernatural heist.
Okay, so to really get a feel for how this was all supposed to work, let's dive into one of the most famous stories about the hand. This one comes from Northumberland, and it starts just how you'd expect a good ghost story to start, with a mysterious stranger showing up at an inn on a dark and stormy night.
So this stranger, who's a beggar, is allowed to sleep by the fire. Seems harmless enough, right? Well, once everyone else is in bed, he pulls out this withered hand and lights the fingers like they're candles. Each finger that catches fire puts one person in the house into a deep, deep sleep. But then, there's a problem. One finger just won't light, and that's because one person in the house, a servant girl, is still awake.
So this servant girl, peeking from her hiding spot, watches in horror as this beggar starts to ransack the inn. She's terrified, but she's got to do something. She tries to put out the hand's magical flames. She blows on them. Nothing. They don't even flicker. She throws beer on them. The fire doesn't even hiss. The magic, the enchantment, it was just too strong.
Totally desperate, she grabs the only thing left she hasn't tried, a jug of milk. She throws it on the hand, and poof! Instantly, the flames go out. The spell breaks, everyone wakes up, and the thief is caught. And this right here reveals one of the weirdest, most specific parts of the whole legend. The hand's only weakness was milk.
And look, this legend wasn't just some spooky campfire story. It really captured the public's imagination. This quote here is from a super popular 19th century collection of myths and poems. You can just feel the dark, commanding power people thought this thing had. This was considered serious, powerful dark magic.
So all of this begs a pretty big question, right? If you're a thief back in the 17th century and you want one of these, how in the world do you even make one? Well, turns out the instructions are alarmingly specific.
Okay, so according to these old magic books, they're called grimoires, like the famous Petit Albert. The whole process was this grotesque ritual. First, you had to get the hand of a criminal right from the gallows, and preferably during a lunar eclipse. Then, you had to squeeze out all the blood and pickle it for 2 weeks in this nasty mix of salt, saltpeter, and peppers. After that, it was dried in the sun. And for the final touch, you'd make a candle to go with it, using fat from the very same criminal. It is an unbelievably detailed and just gnarly recipe.
So if some thief is walking around with this terrifying thing, how on earth are you supposed to protect yourself? Well, the defenses were just as bizarre as the weapon. You could whip up an ointment from, get this, the gall of a black cat, the fat of a white hen, and the blood of a screech owl, and then you'd smear that on your doorstep. Or, if you were in a pinch, like our hero, the servant girl, you could just throw some milk on it. Simple as that.
Okay, so we've covered the folklore, the magic, the whole creepy story. But the big question remains, did these things actually exist? And this is where the story takes a really fascinating turn, from pure legend to actual investigation.
So, the year is 1935. a really strange object gets donated to the Whitby Museum in North Yorkshire. What was it? It was a dried, severed human hand. And to this day, it's believed to be the only authentic hand of glory that we know of.
Now, this hand wasn't found on some criminal caught in the act. No, it was found hidden away inside the wall of a cottage. This is actual physical evidence that suggests people were creating and maybe even using these things well into the 1800s, but its location also raises a totally new question.
I mean, think about it. Why hide it in a wall? People used to hide protective charms all the time, things called witch bottles, in their homes to ward off evil. So, is it possible this hand wasn't a burglar's tool at all? Could it have been a talisman meant to protect the house from thieves? Where they found it completely complicates the whole story we thought we knew.
But then, what if this entire legend is just built on a simple mistake? This might be the most compelling explanation of them all. So experts who study word origins think the term Hand of Glory is probably just a mistranslation. See, the French name is Main de Gloire. That sounds an awful lot like mandragore, which is the French word for the mandrake root. And guess what? The mandrake root, which kind of looks like a tiny person, was also a powerful magical object that was believed to glow in the dark. It's totally possible that this whole gruesome story about a thief's severed hand just grew out of a linguistic mix-up. So, whether it was a real tool, a protective charm, or just a mistranslated myth, it still makes you wonder, why were people so ready to believe in the power of a dead man's hand in the first place?
Well, this belief in the Hand of Glory didn't just pop up out of thin air. It taps into a much older, much deeper idea that human remains hold power. I mean, we see it with religious relics, right? And in folklore, the body parts of criminals were seen as especially potent. The thinking was that their violent lives had somehow infused their remains with this dark energy, an energy that could be harnessed for magic.
And here's the bottom line when it comes to the evidence. For all the wild stories, there are zero, and I mean zero, credible, first-hand accounts of a Hand of Glory actually working. The stories are always told by a friend of a friend. You know the type. It's the classic sign of an urban legend. There's a whole lot of smoke, but absolutely no verifiable fire.
So, when all is said and done, what are we left with? We've got one real physical artifact sitting in a museum. We've got a whole library of terrifying folklore. And we've got a very plausible mistranslation at the heart of it all. It really makes you wonder, was the real power of the Hand of Glory ever in the object itself? Or was it just in the dark, fascinating, and frankly fearful stories that we as people choose to believe?